Hey Adam,
Hey, Steven.
it's been a long time. It's been a
Yeah,
long time.
it's pretty
You know, we
quick, back to back now. After 6 months.
this is the second one. Don't get too excited. We've said this many times before. Um, okay, so today I wanted to. I didn't tell you what the topic was going to be ahead of time. I want to get your honest feedback. Um, I I think it'll tie into a lot of other conversations we had, but I just want to ask you very bluntly on the spiritual path, you know, moving forward and progressing and unraveling the onion that is self, the ego, whatever you want to call it, what to you is maybe the best way or the maybe a series of best ways to F it up and slow it down?
F it
How
up.
do you, how do you, yeah, how do you F it up? How do you mess up that process? What would you do if you were someone was like, I can't stand this self-inquiry kind of thing, and I want to go back into the matrix.
Yeah,
What do you tell them? What do you tell that person?
yeah. And remember that scene in the Matrix where
Yeah, the
the
steak.
steak, yeah, the steak.
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss. Um, you know, having done this repeatedly myself too, is take things very seriously.
Oh my
And
God, that was exactly what I was gonna say.
really,
Yeah.
and the corollary to that, or the part two to that is take things very personally.
Mm-hmm.
Take things seriously
Yeah.
and take things personally, and I have done both, and I have done both very, very well.
Yeah.
I think
Sure.
that's
I
the
think we all
ticket.
have.
That's the ticket to illusion and ticket to suffering. That's the quickest way for me.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think I was thinking about this because I had the benefit of thinking about it ahead of time. What are you drinking, by the way?
I'm drinking Starbucks horchata latte.
Nice, nice. Okay, shout out to horchata, God's favorite drink. All right. So I was thinking, yeah, take yourself seriously, like really seriously. And my other one was be really hard on yourself.
Oh,
Like
that's good.
give yourself zero break for anything.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah. I love it. That's
yeah.
great. Good. Well, what else can we teach people about how to ruin their lives?
Um, Yeah, I mean the problem is those are such good generalities
Yeah.
that like where do you like that kind of sums up the whole problem, doesn't it?
Well, how about some specifics then?
Sure.
Well,
Yeah, yeah.
take things very seriously. Okay. Uh, and take things personally. Well, for example, I notice, um, I got this email not too long ago, several months ago, about a potentially being involved in litigation. This happens every now and then in medicine. Something happens and some family member is upset, and they decide to sue everyone in the hospital, and including the hospital itself. Oftentimes, it generally goes nowhere. The cases get dropped, and it's not an issue. But it is interesting to watch the mind have at it. The very first initial reactions. One is fear. Oh my gosh, am I going to get sued to the ground and lose everything I have, and like the fear around monetary loss. And then there's like the guilt of, oh my god, did I actually do something wrong that I'm just not aware of, and I'm a terrible person, and uh, and then there's the anger. How could they do this? Like, don't they have anything better to do? Like, don't they know that we're struggling to help their loved one in the hospital? Why would they think that we have any ill intention? I mean, I get that some doctors and surgeons maybe make really terrible mistakes, but I can't think of anything that I did that would warrant that kind of attack. And then it feels like you're being attacked. It feels like this is personal. And I watched my mind go through all these hoops. And the key in all of that is I took all of it personally. And my ticket out is to realize, oh, them suing the hospital, and by default all the doctors involved in the care, actually has nothing to do with me. But that's like one of the last realizations to come. There's all the stuff beforehand.
After you exhaust the other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, because taking things personally has, well, that's a good meaning of it. I think that's the normal meaning. Like, don't take it. It's not really about you. It's about them.
Yeah.
I think I want to go a little bit deeper though, and it's to really, so like, what does it look like to do the opposite, right? Obviously you came to the realization it has nothing to do with you. Like, it's them. You could call it their projection. They're
Mm-hmm.
just, that's how they're lashing out in a stage of grief that a loved one's died, is to
Mm-hmm.
blame others. There's lots of good sound, like, reasons for why it is not about you,
Right.
anyone else. But I think an even more basic sense of taking it personally is that you think that the voice telling you that it's personal is real, right? The voice that tells you, like, I'm being attacked. It's not about whether that's the same voice that says, "Oh, it's about them, not
Yeah.
me." It's the same voice says it's their problem, not mine.
Yeah.
It's still pushing it out. Um, And yeah, anyway, so I
Yeah.
think that's a really fascinating conversation. It's like, are you taking that voice seriously no matter what it says? Which is, I think, what we were both getting to when we said, don't take
Don't
it
take
so
it so
seriously.
seriously.
It's like, what's the underlying, like, why? Why don't you take it seriously? Why not take it seriously, right? Isn't life serious? Isn't life meant to be taken seriously? Isn't this path we're on super serious? Um, and I think that's why my response was, don't take it too seriously, because the voice that's telling you one way or the other is not giving you good information.
Yeah.
And I'm going to shut my window because my dog's barking, but let's keep going.
Well, I think what you're saying is valid. It's a good point. Um, and it sort of begs the question, where's that voice coming from? What is that voice?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's lots of ways to answer that.
Yeah.
Lately, I have been exploring Advaita Vedanta a bit more in depth than, like, this is my current tradition du jour. My what I
You
what I'm
dilettante.
researching. Sorry, it's got a certain je ne sais quoi.
Yeah. You need
I don't.
more French phrases, huh?
Yeah, wait. Um, as the French say, what?
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 It's true, they do say that.
What?
And it's
But
spelled
the Quebecois say it
spelled
even weirder.
OUI.
Have you ever heard a Quebecois person talk?
No, I have, yes. What? Go ahead,
Yeah.
do the impression.
No, I can't. I actually can't. I actually really do love the Quebecois accent. That was not going to a mean joke. That was I like it.
Gotcha.
I just like watching the feud from afar, the French Quebecois feud. Okay. Um,
Well,
what was I
Advaita
talking about?
Vedanta.
Vedanta Vedanta. So yeah, so the the voice is the sense of I-ness. And I think it's like, what else would it be, right? Oh, you're talking to somebody. Of course. What do you mean? Of course, it's the I-ness. What else is there besides that? And I think that's a great question for the ego to ask. Uh,
Yeah.
is what else is there besides it? And I think it's like a voice that co-opts. It co-opts senses. It co-opts thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
right? You could just say, you could take the position that a thought is happening to no one, right? Like, the thought is just happening. Or you could say the senses are just happening, like sight is happening, but there's no one seeing. And um, that then if you like, if that's your practice, if you kind of take that on as like a, this is kind of like the way that Advaita Vedanta works, is the path of knowledge and reason, and you take that on as a practice and it becomes real for you, then you can see that, like, it has nothing to do with you. Like, there's no sense of, you don't need to claim thoughts
Yeah.
and feelings and sensory experience, and you can just let it be without having to say it's my thoughts,
Yeah.
it's my emotions. The I really is, it is a voice that is almost superimposed onto these things.
Yeah.
And we could get into, we don't really need to get into like why that is, what it actually is necessarily, but
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
I think it's best to think about it as like a voice that is co-opting
Yeah.
these experiences and saying, these are my experiences. They're not just experiences, they're mine. And someone else's are different experiences.
Something that I've tried several times is just being still and having that voice say I. That's it. Just say just I. I. And then just repeating that internally and have it and becoming aware of who's saying that I. And watching something about the simplicity of that word, just watching as the thought I punctuates this space of awareness. I. It just seemingly comes out of nowhere. And then the fact that I'm aware, the fact that there's awareness of the word I when it arises automatically shows that it's not who you are. And that I is a voice that can get fairly complex, but it's just a thought arising in an open field. And the same thing, and you said it as well just now, is the senses. A physical sensation, like right now, wherever you're sitting, maybe there's an ache in your back or your body, or maybe you just feel the weight of the chair pushing up against your thighs. Whatever the physical sensation is, it's it's just a sensation arising in this awareness. There's no one to whom it's happening, and there's such a spaciousness that happens with that. I notice it's almost like getting behind the thoughts. If you could kind of use the foreground and background analogies, even that's not quite it. But there's something in this awareness of the voice that creates tremendous freedom. When I realize that I am not the voice that's talking, I don't need to. Here's the key. Here's the key.
Give me the key.
So much of spirituality, or so much of spiritual growth, is trying to change the thoughts, trying to have a different thought. You're like cajoling the nature and quality of the thought itself. And then there's this other way, which is like Teflon. You completely non-stick to the thought itself. And you don't actually try to change the thought. You just let whatever is thinking, be. And behind it all is this complete endless presence. And it's silly. I don't like to say, and that's who you are, and that's who I am, because that's like another concept of labeling that thing. But really, it's sort of the presence in which all of these senses and thoughts arise.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's beautifully said. And I think that, that's why taking yourself seriously is such a good way to ruin this process, because taking yourself seriously is the direct opposite of allowing thoughts to be exactly as they are, allowing the senses to be exactly as they are. It is the claiming of them, and then the judgment of them, the comparison of them. This
Yeah.
shouldn't be here. My life shouldn't be like this. Yeah, it's just that's I really I always come back to the Zen don't know mind. I think that the Zen don't know mind has got to be one of the most brilliant, simple tools um, to have to in one's toolbox, which is just not admitting and being okay with the fact that you don't have the answer to anything.
Yeah.
You don't. You just exist in this. There's no like, well, what does this thought mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
What is it? It just it lets it die. It lets the
Yeah.
energy die because thoughts are momentum. Like when you get caught up in them, there's a momentum to them.
Yeah.
And in fact, I mean, so much of my experience has been just caught up in these thoughts and experiences that you just can't rip yourself out of. And they're, these negative experiences, these like thought spirals or emotional spirals, whatever it happens to be. But just admitting that I don't know when it's going to stop. I don't know what it means. I don't know any of that. But there's something about that for me, that don't know mind, of just admitting that I just don't know. That kills the momentum, or lets the momentum die down
Yeah.
gently.
What do you do with emotions? I like that you said claim. How did you word it? Um, like you claiming the thoughts as your own. Um, I have experience that often happens with emotions too. I,
Hmm.
like there's a or the sort of a feeling charge with the thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. I, there are, I guess, different schools about this and different ways to think about it. I kind of flip between all of it's just mind, like
Mm-hmm.
it's just a thought. A feeling is still in the mind. There's still a mind recognizing a feeling,
Yeah.
right? So it's just in. But I think that's sometimes too complex. Like it's too much of an intellectual answer to like, oh well, technically it's just thought. But so then I would put it to the side of a thought. I would say like thoughts and feelings go very well together, and I don't often know in the moment what came first,
Mm-hmm.
whether the thought came first or the feeling came first. There's people have all sorts of answers about this, of what actually came first. And sometimes if you're watching, you can actually see which one comes first. But that implies that you're watching it as it happens, which isn't always the case. It's rarely the case for a lot of us. Um, but I think I treat it like the thought, like I relate it to a thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if there's a feeling of frustration, I find the thought that thinks something's wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's like one of either the thought or the feeling is usually a a trigger for me that there's its partner.
Yeah.
I find and identify its partner. Um, that yeah, that doesn't always mean that I can stop them. I mean, this is like you were saying about two different attitudes about this. One is that I only want to have good thoughts. This kind of like,
Yeah.
if my thoughts should be better,
Yeah.
my thoughts should be more loving, more, and I don't want to knock that, because I do think that that's an important part of the path, is consciously looking at our patterns and looking at the way that we judge others and judge ourselves, and then finding an alternative, and consciously being gentler with ourselves. I do think that's an important part, but I think at some point you realize that after all of the work you've done, there's still, you just have crappy thoughts, whether they're about yourselves or about other people. That just happens, and same with the feelings. Like, okay, how do you control a mood? I mean, the person who invents how to control a mood without some sort of like pharmaceutical,
Mm-hmm.
like not, like you could look at like a, obviously you can take drugs to feel certain ways, but like some way to, like, I will always, you take this little thing, you will always be in a good mood. Like that person's gonna become the first trillionaire. Like like
Yeah.
we want to feel better. We want to feel better. And but there's also this, eventually you come to realize, or I came to realize, that there's gonna be times when I feel good and times when I feel bad. And I suppose the spiritual path, if it's anything, is putting myself in a position so that I feel good more of the time
Mm-hmm.
than I feel bad. And that comes to, things like not staying up late, not drinking too much,
Mm-hmm.
having good habits. These are things that, like, they like, it's, I used to think that it was because uh that'll somehow give you something.
Mm.
If you're perfectly disciplined, you'll get something out, you'll get something distinct. And I think now I think about it as it gives you balance, and there's a whole other conversation about the heightening of emotions and the frequency of emotions as one becomes more and more refined in their spiritual path. But I think I'll just finish up this thought that they moods, feelings, thoughts, all just they keep coming,
Yeah.
and you don't have to know why. You don't have. There's nothing wrong with it. They just will. They just will until they don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the simplest way to say it. And the point is not to control them. The point is to just, without some sort of dissociative, like, because it's without dissociating. And maybe I'll just go into that real quick. Without dissociating from them, just watching them without engaging them. And I think dissociating, I'm kind of like, it's dissociation when you say they're not my thoughts, that I'm somewhere else out here. I'm like in La La Land and it's happening somewhere else. That could be a quote of dissociation because you're actively fighting them off. Like dissociation to me comes when you're fighting the thoughts. You're saying, I don't want that, get it out of here. I'm pushing it away. We're just watching as a neutral. It doesn't take effort to do.
Yeah.
It is effortless or very light effort.
What I think what you just said is probably, in my experience, one of the most important lessons to remember.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, you're up. You're welcome. Welcome. I think it's just like it's so important because um, for how long we've been doing this, and many of our listeners are lifelong meditators and or deep into their own unique particular path. What I find is the very first lesson and the most basic lesson is allowing, is acceptance, is presence, and it continues so long into the journey. It never goes away. It's like the most critical first step. Whether you're just starting on the path, the moment of having awareness of a runaway thought that's causing pain and struggle, or an emotion that's really intense, a negative emotion in particular, you can't struggle and wrestle it to change. The only solution that has meaningful that produces meaningful transformation is sort of a welcoming of that emotion, of that thought, like a non-judgmental awareness, a non-judgmental presence of that. The sort of feeling that I get is like when a trapeze artist jumps off and they're at the circus and they have those really huge nets that are very, very stretchy, and you can kind of watch the net like dip down really, really far, and it takes like the momentum of the fall, and it just sort of like it dies in the net, right? Like the net just like it just takes all of that kinetic energy, and the person's fine. That's what you're doing. It's funny. I've never actually said this out loud, but it feels like that's what I'm doing internally with a thought, like a complete welcoming of the intensity of the emotion and the thought, like a falling trapeze artist, and it just gets caught in this loving net of presence and awareness. And what happens is when the intensity of the motion of the fall comes to a more stable place, that what I notice is then things are seen for what they are. The
Mm-hmm.
thought is seen for what it really is, where it's coming from. The emotion is seen for what it really is. And there's something that happens in the seeing of it that cuts right through the thought. And we've had this conversation around Trekcho and the idea of cutting through the illusion of something. But the mind cuts through the appearance of the thought, and you see what's actually happening. And then the same thought, in my experience, is no longer as sticky. It's still going to come again. The same thing will trigger you again. The same person, the same situation. They may say the same thing to you, and it'll bother you. But if that thought and feeling is really welcomed deeply, then it just does not have the same weight that it had before. It doesn't trigger in the same way. And you keep doing this long enough, in my experience, things don't have the cut that they used to. They don't have the heaviness that they used to. Life becomes very, very light.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put that. And I'll just add that, you know, once you start doing this and have a taste of it, um, like you said, you'll start realizing like where you said I believe you said where thoughts come from,
Hmm.
and it's like you just welcome it, you allow it, and we could go into like the resistance and why we resist these things and why it's so hard to welcome them and the kind of ego structure and our like self-defense, ego self-defense and things like that. But I something about what you said about seeing where they come from is you do this enough, you start doing it, and eventually something clicks. Like you said, okay, you get triggered less, and sometimes you get triggered more, and you kind of goes back and forth. It doesn't feel linear, but then at some point, something happens and it just clicks. You're like, oh right, I actually don't have to take that seriously at all. It's a joke. And
Yeah.
then it has no charge whatsoever. And
Yeah.
then what do you know? Lo and behold, it stops happening. Like
Yes.
that's my experience. Is that the whole thing just stops the situation stops happening as soon as you get it that you don't need to take it seriously at all.
Yeah.
Um, which comes back to our initial, what do you do to screw this up? Is take it seriously.
Yes. Yeah.
There's so many things like you could talk about this in so many ways about why taking it seriously, how taking it seriously kind of mucks up the gears, for lack of a better word. I know that I know that Ramakrishna in India, he said you're it's basically like you're a magnet, or the mind is a magnet covered in mud. The magnet's fine. You just got to get the mud off, and as soon as you remove the mud, it's like just gets zapped back to the bigger magnet, which in his case was God, or enlightenment, the divine. That
Oh, that's
you're just
so
uncovering the mud,
cool.
and as soon as you uncover the mud, the magnet's still perfectly functional. But if you take yourself if you take yourself seriously, you're just covering yourself in mud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A good continuation of that analogy is another analogy. One of my older
Analogies on analogies on
analogies upon
analogies.
analogies. There's a teacher of mine who's passed away now, but his name was Michael Tamura. Really great guy. He's like well known in the psychic circles and among other things. But what he was really passionate about was awakening. Like for some reason he um, grew up being able to see and know things that others didn't. What you could say, like he had sort of an innate psychic gift or whatnot, and he found himself being able to teach others how to develop that. But very quickly, and I think in his 20s and 30s, he realized like that's not really what it's all about. The game that's being played is the game of awakening. And then he started to guide the people that he taught to that effect. One thing that he shared with me was when something is happening that disturbs you or upsets you, imagine yourself to be a, an empty glass pane, like a pane of glass. And in the sense that whatever's occurring is just going right through. There's nothing pushing back. There's nothing reflecting back. There's no stain uh, hiding reality or coloring reality. It's completely clear glass, and there's no one there to engage with reality as it arises. And so when I first heard that, I thought, wow, oh, that's such an interesting idea, just to imagine myself as just a clear pane of glass and all of life is occurring in and through me. As it sort of speaks to the shunyata aspect of
It's a
teaching.
big word.
It means emptiness in Buddhism. I think it's a Sanskrit word actually. So they have
Yeah,
the
it is.
same word
Yeah,
in Vedanta as well. But
yeah.
like that, things aren't inherently real. In the sense that they don't need to have an impact or an effect on you. They don't need to disturb your peace. You choose to have them disturb your peace. But when you realize they're empty of substance, there's no weight, there's no heaviness to it.
Yeah, so now I want to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole. We've talked about watching thoughts, and we've talked about
I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. Remember? The White Rabbit?
no,
Alice in
no, I don't
Wonderland?
remember that at all. Never heard of it.
Oh my god. It's the White Rabbit.
Um,
He's like running
yeah, I
late and
know.
he's
Yeah, yeah. Are you late for something? Do you need to go?
Nope.
Okay,
But
you're
that's what
just
the
being
White
cruel.
Rabbit says.
Thank you. Thank you.
You should watch
Um,
Alice in Wonderland again.
okay,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay, what were you saying?
Um, gosh darn it.
I'm so
No,
sorry I derailed you.
I got. You didn't derail me. I just like making your life harder, little by little. So we've talked about watching thoughts. We've talked about the importance of not taking oneself seriously. So now I want to just float something by you, dear listener, and by you, Adam, um, that I think might just turn the key a little further. And that is, we were talking about recognizing thoughts, recognizing feelings. When you recognize you're having a thought, what comes with it is memory, feeling, senses. So if you're just going around and you're just like doing your life, you're not really thinking, you're just going about getting water, whatever you're doing, driving around, and then all of a sudden there's a thought. And the thought is, oh my God, I really can't stand the way that they just talked to me, that person just talked to me. In that moment, at the same time as the thought, you have the feeling of dislike, you have the sense of, oh my God, she did say that to me that way, or that email was mean. Like but they all happen at the same time. And before the thought arose, none of that was there. The thought, then the memory. I mean, this is really trippy.
This
If
is
you want to go
great.
down this, the memory of what had happened is happening in the present,
Yeah.
which means that the memory itself is just like the thought. A memory is like a thought or a feeling. It's completely ephemeral. It's not actually pointing to something that happened in something called a past. It's happening now.
Yeah.
And it comes with thoughts.
Yeah.
It's like we get delivered a package that contains everything we need to take life seriously.
Mm-hmm.
A sense of self, that they're my thoughts. The thoughts themselves, the feelings that go with those thoughts in tandem, like I was saying, for me, that's how it appears. The thoughts and the memory of what had just happened. Oh yeah, and then then they did this, and then this happened, and then this happened. But all those are only, that memory only happens when you're thinking about it. Like it doesn't exist somewhere else that definitely happened. It exists only when you're thinking about the situation in the context in which you're thinking it. And then sights, sounds, sensations, all of our sense feelings, they happen in association with that thought, because anyone else could have had that exact same experience and had a completely different set of sights, sounds, memories, sensations. We're literally, I mean, it sounds crazy to say this, but it's like we're being delivered these packages that are perfectly tailored to us to engage and take life and take ourselves and the I seriously. It gives us everything we need to take it all very seriously. It's not just the thought.
Yeah.
It's everything that one experiences in that moment of thinking and one becomes aware of.
It's no wonder why it's so challenging, you could argue, to wake up.
Yeah.
Because it's really the most ingenious collection of sensations. The sensation of the body existing, the memories of who you were, your story, your particular story that gives you a sense of self, all of that happening this right now, here in the present moment. What an illusion. What an illusion. But it can be deconstructed.
Yeah, and that's why the path is not adding something new. It's not about having better feelings. It's about seeing what feelings really are. Because as soon as you know what the feelings are, it's completely irrelevant if they're good or bad.
Yeah.
And that's why it's the point is to slow down, slow the entire process down to where you can start to see it. And the only way you start to do that is by just disengaging from it and not taking it seriously. However best you can in the moment. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't. And you're just along for the ride. And it's like, well, this is a roller coaster I'm familiar with, and we're just going to ride it for now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a really good point. I've gotten into situations where um, I struggle because, again, this is the ingenuity. Yes, it's
Ingenuity
the
thing.
ingenuity of the ego, um, which always essentially the ego says this: what is shouldn't be. That's essentially just the ego's mo, wrapped up. What is shouldn't be, or another way of saying is what is wrong. Something wrong happened, and I need to do something about it. It's so deep. It's so deep. So even in the effort to realize who we are, there's this subtle feeling of where I am right now in my process of realizing who I am is not okay, and I need to fix it. I need to figure out who I really am, and that in itself too is like the searching of the seeker. You're seeking for what's right in front of your face. Until the
Mm-hmm.
seeking drops away, that can't be seen.
Yeah, and I think the seeking machinery is like the
Oh, so good. It's
got to be
so
like the last thing that goes. I don't know. It's so deep, and so many of us that are on this path, the seeking is something turned on in us that decided to seek, and
yeah.
for most of us, it's been the one thing that is just about as consistent as the sense of I. Is this notion of seeking, of finding something.
Let me ask you a question. Um, what is, or maybe recently, what has been your default or your most powerful reminder of who you are?
Hmm.
What do you find yourself going back to, perhaps not consciously, but it just arises and brings you back to that awareness?
It's what I shared just now about the whole thing becoming as a package. So for a
Mm,
while, it was like the thought was, uh, you know, the thought was being delivered. It's like, oh, there's a thought, and then I either claim it with the ego or just let it go, and don't claim it and just watch it go by. And then I don't for some reason I just realized that the memory comes with it, the sights and sounds come with it, and the feeling comes with it, and it just all comes together as a package. And for whatever reason, as soon as I realize that, as soon as I'm like, oh yeah, it's like a package that gets delivered to me, it just goes poof, and the whole thing goes bye bye. All the emotion, the sights, the not the senses that go with it, the memories that go with it go bye bye. And so it's like for right now, it's seeing it as this package that gets delivered, um, everything together, which can feel a little trippy at times because when I say like sights and sounds go away, it's not that there's like I stop seeing things, it's that I stop recognizing that I'm seeing things. Like there becomes no awareness of like right now I'm staring at a computer screen with Adam's face on it. Like that sense goes away.
yeah.
Obviously I know that I'm still seeing something. There's a perception of something, but it's not registering as a concept. I'd say that yeah, just seeing it as it's like a package that gets delivered to me, just perfectly for me to just take that bait if I want it
Yeah.
on a silver platter, and I do. I mean, I obviously get caught up in it all the time. That's why that's so powerful to see it.
There's a book, two books actually, by Peter Jubin, and I probably think we mentioned it in this episode or in this podcast. Last name is spelled Dziuban, but it's pronounced Jubin, Peter Jubin. The book is called Simply Notice, and it's his more recent one. His first one was Is Consciousness Is All. It's called Consciousness Is All. He does a really good job. For those of you who who are listening to Stephen and you feel like there's something in what Stephen's saying, I would recommend that. He does a really good job of breaking down the constituents of experience and showing you there's no one there. There's no one there. It's pure awareness without a name, without a story, without a past, without a future, pure awareness. And within that, are these constituents of experience that in their amalgamation, somehow the special sauce of them coming all together gives this really distinct impression that there is a self who's living a life that, is named you, whoever it is that you think you are.
Yeah, and I'll second that. I know you have read more of Peter's stuff than I have, but I started listening to it recently at your recommendation, and I mean, when you go down this road, like I said, I'm studying Advaita Vedanta. Like, I could spend years studying this and getting down with the nitty gritty of everything, all this Sanskrit terminology and what it means, what it doesn't mean, blah 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 blah, which sometimes is like fun and engaging. But Peter's stuff is so simple and so devoid of anything to do with religion. I found it's as simple language as you could possibly get. Pretty much. I don't. I think it'd be a struggle to actually get much simpler than Peter, but it's super powerful because it's so clear. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need fancy language. You don't need to understand what Sanskrit means, all the different components, blah 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 blah, and what they mean in different languages. Peter's stuff is very powerful and very simple and straightforward.
You said Sanskrit.
Which is all you need.
I'm impressed. You said Sanskrit, not Sanskrit.
As opposed, sometimes it's just the European in me. I just hate hard A's.
Yeah, for me, one thing to take the question to myself.
I was going to say, what about you?
You're doing a terrible job at being a co-host, by the way. That was your job. You were supposed to be. What about you, Adam? Well, what is it for you? But it's okay.
I started this entire conversation, and I don't take that on. It's your fault for not asking yourself the question.
Great. So someone needs to be blamed. That's a great ego technique. Someone needs to be blamed because something's wrong. Something's wrong right now.
Now I want a t-shirt. And just in black t-shirt, big, bold, white letters. It's just blame someone.
Can you buy that? If we ever have merch, yeah. I would love to have that
that's the perfect Letters to the Sky merch. I think that's going on the list, top of the list. Just blame someone.
Just blame someone. Yeah, it's what we all do so often. There's been two things that have brought me back to the simplicity of awareness, of presence awareness. One is that the answer, I'll tell you what I tell myself or what arises in my mind. God is here and nowhere else. I've been using that phrase quite a bit because there's a part of my mind that seeks for the future, that there's something in the future that will happen that will make life better than what it is. And there's also a part of my mind that feels things were better in the past. There's something in the past that I don't have anymore. But when I look at it, like just yesterday, last night, there was a thought that occurred to me like, oh, there's this one thing that happened in the past that I wish I could re-experience. And as I was sort of looking back at myself, looking back at the past, I recognized that it was just a thought arising now in the moment. And that's all the past ever is thoughts arising here and now in the moment. And so then the thought occurred to me, wow, the past is like a corpse. The past is dead. there's no aliveness in the past. There's only aliveness in the moment. In fact, the moment is life. This present moment is life itself. It's the raw. It's the juice of life is here and now, nowhere else. And so I find myself telling that to myself. God is here and nowhere else, because it makes everything simple. And then boom, I'm just right in the present moment. I'm not running away from what is, just right here. And then the second thing that brings me back to presence awareness is something we shared in the last episode, which is the phrase zero resistance. I've that's been a huge gateway for me. Just that phrase alone, zero resistance, and maybe that can be another T-shirt. It's not as funny, but it's powerful.
It sure isn't. We need to find a way to make it into a meme.
Yeah, but it's so powerful for me because the subtlety of how we resist our life, how we resist life, period. It's very insidious, and there's so many different ways where I find myself just being a little unhappy with the way things are right now, and that's a form of resistance. And when I tell myself zero resistance, it's like all that just drops away, and things get quiet again.
Beautiful.
Just like now.
Just like now.
Sir, any final words?
I feel like I've said too much already.
You do talk a lot.
Thanks.
Perhaps too much.
I'm trying to cut back.
Good.
We should do less of these episodes. We've been talking too much lately. Too many episodes.
Way too many. I think we need another 6 months.
Yeah.
Of silence.
Yeah. Bad news, guys. Bad news. No, I don't have anything else to say.
No.
I feel complete.
That's
what about
great.
you?
Yeah, if people are interested, we'll have to remember to do this, but show notes, the books we talked about, Consciousness is All by Peter Jubin and Simply Notice, both of which are in audio book. I highly recommend Simply Notice during a long car drive. Ooh, it's delicious. It's like it just brings the drive into this phenomenal place of simplicity and presence. Great meditations for a long commute. All right. On that note,
I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
I will see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.